Hi, I'm Marie, mom and wife full-time. That's me, Paul, that's my husband, works a trading gig. And let's just say he's married to his job just as much as he is to me. Used to scribble down thoughts on books, reading between and beyond the lines. But these days, I'm more about reading bedtime stories to our boy Jack. Life threw some curveballs early on, lost my parents when I still needed them. That was rough. Then along came Paul with a family, and to his folks were the real deal, good people. You know? Took me in no questions, made me feel like I finally belonged somewhere again. Been with Paul for years now, since those college days when love seemed to be enough to fill any void. We settled into a rhythm, he at work and me taking care of everything else. But man, did that rhythm skip and stumble when Jack came into the picture. Paul changed, or maybe this was always him just waiting for a reason to surface. He'd come home on a Friday night with a few too many drinks in him, loose-lipped and surly. "You gotta start shedding that weight, Marie." He'd snipe after slipping off his tie. "You barely fit in those jeans anymore." I'd be lying if I said it didn't hurt, but I told myself to brush it off, toughen up. Maybe he'd cool down by morning, but mornings just brought hangovers and silence until the next round. The house became this place where I tiptoed, trying not to set Paul off. Jack, little trooper, he could feel it too. Sticking close, watching his old man with wide, careful eyes. One particularly rough Friday, Paul came home and made a beeline for the fridge, crack open a cold one. I was on the floor with Jack, blocks scattered around. "Another day in paradise, huh?" Paul sneered, leaning against the counter. I forced a smile. "Just the usual, chasing after this little tornado." I ruffled Jack's hair, but my heart wasn't in it. Paul tossed his head back, downing half the bottle. "Maybe put some of that energy into a workout routine, eh?" I bit my tongue, counting to 10 in my head. "I'll look into it," was all I managed, shuffling Jack into his pile of toys. Anything to escape the cutting edge in Paul's tone. But the weight wasn't just on my hips, it was on my chest, heavy, making it hard to breathe. I didn't know who I was in Paul's eyes anymore. I had finally shaken off those last stubborn pounds. It felt good, kind of. But Paul? Well, he had a talent for finding flaws. My sweats and baggy tees were the new target. "Jesus, Marie, you dress like you're living at the gym. When was the last time you dressed up? Remember how you used to look?" There he was, leaning on the doorframe with that look that said everything his words didn't. "I do," I sighed, rolling my eyes. "Well, unless my husband starts taking meetings at the playground or the grocery store, I think I'll stick with practical." He shook his head, chuckling without humor. "You used to care, Marie." His voice trailed off as he wandered back toward the living room, his disapproval hanging in the air like a bad smell. Then there was Jack, our boy, trying to navigate the shaky terrain between us. I was teaching him please and thank you, thinking manners mattered. Paul caught a bit of our lesson one afternoon and scoffed. "Look at you, teaching him to be Mr. Manners. You want him to get trampled on?" "Manners are important, Paul. It's about respect," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "Respect is earned, not politeness. Be last," he shot back. "He needs to toughen up, not be some yes please pushover." Then the whole freeloader thing started. One night, Paul came home to Saw, looking like he had won and lost the same fight. "Nice day?" he asked, sarcasm heavy as he glanced around what I'd come to see as our minefield of a home. I put down Jack's toy and braced for what was coming. Just the same, dealing with tantrums and spills. How was work? Paul's laugh was short and sharp. "Work? Oh, it was just Dandy, supporting a parasite. My cheeks burned. Excuse me, my voice was a little too loud. Jack's eyes flitted from me to Paul, sensing the shift. A parasite, Marie? I work, you play house? He said, each word pointed and heavy. That's the thanks I get? I am raising our child, Paul. Your child. That's work. That's vital, I said, my voice rising now too. Jack started fussing then, picking up on the tension. I swept him up into my arms, trying to shield him from the fallout. Paul had a knack for knowing when he pushed too far, and his next words were more measured. Marie, I go out there and deal with sharks all day. Come home and what? I don't know, something different. I can't be your one-man show, Paul, I said softly, trying to diffuse the bomb that our marriage had become. I'm here, juggling a million things for us, for Jack. We looked at each other then, really looked, and I wondered if he saw the plea in my eyes, that, help me, back me up, be with me, that I felt screaming inside. But he turned away, the finality of his silence telling me that no, he didn't see, he didn't want to. One day, the disrespect boiled over. Jack scrunched up his little face and called me a name. A real zinger he got from Paul. You're just a lazy bum, he had hurled at me, his tiny voice bitter and angry. I felt like I'd been slapped. What, Jack? No, you can't say that, I stumbled, shocked. He folded his arms, stubborn as his dad. Dad says it, so can I. That was the last straw. When Paul got home, I was waiting, steaming like a forgotten kettle. You know what your son called me today? I laid into him without waiting for an answer. Paul dropped his keys on the counter and chuckled, clearly not seeing the line had been crossed. What did he say? The truth. I tossed his words over my shoulder as he walked to the fridge, his casualness like acid on my skin. Is that funny to you? I was shouting now. My usual restraint snapped tight as a dry twig. Your son is calling me names, Paul. I leaned against the kitchen counter, beer in hand, a smirk blooming on his face. Oh, come on, Marie. Kid's got to learn to stand his ground. I was staring at him, hands balled into fists by disrespecting his mother. He shrugged, a lazy lift of his shoulders that sent me teetering on the edge. You're too soft on him, look. He's getting some spine. My voice shot up another octave. Spine, he grinned and ruffled Jack's hair. Ain't that right, champ? I turned to Jack, who was looking at us with eyes that were too old for his face. Jack, listen to me. What you said to me this morning was wrong. You can't talk to people like that. Jack's chin jutted out, defiant and stubborn. But Dad... I don't care what Dad says. You listen to your mom. I cut him off, my heart beating like a drum. I was desperate for him not to follow in Paul's footsteps. But Paul wasn't letting it go. The boy's got to learn to speak up. World's not going to hand him anything. You keep coddling him. He'll end up... I get it, all right? I get it. I cut him off, feeling the weight of his words like a physical thing on my chest. But there's a line. You don't get it, do you? Paul threw up his hands, that ugly smirk still there. Whatever, Marie, you make mountains out of molehills. I turned from him, that burning in my chest now a churning mess. This is not how I want our son to grow up. This disrespect ends now. It ends here. Paul just took a swig of his beer, and I knew right then my words were just bouncing off him. I looked at Jack, really looked at him. You apologize to me now, I said, the power in my voice surprising even me. Jack's eyes darted between me and Paul, but he knew that tone. Sorry, Mom. The word was small, almost lost in the kitchen, but it was there, and it was a start. I moved closer to Jack, knelt down so I was at level with him. Thank you. We treat each other with respect in this house. You got it?" Paul snorted behind me, but I ignored him. Jack nodded, a hint of my boy peeking through that new sullen shadow he wore. It was a crack in the wall Paul was building around him. A crack, but also a starting point. I stood up, squared my shoulders. "We're going to fix this, Jack. No more name-calling, no more disrespect. We're better than that." I took Jack's hand, and we left the room, leaving Paul and his smugness behind us. I stood there on the sidewalk, my phone shaking in my hand. It was one of those moments where your gut ties up in knots. There, across the street, Paul was laughing it up with some woman, blonde, curvy, looking at my husband like he was the last piece of chocolate in the box. My thumb pressed record before I even decided to. The walk home felt 1,000,000 miles long. A part of me hoped it was a misunderstanding, but deep down, I knew. Back in our kitchen, I threw my keys on the counter. Paul was sitting there with a beer like he always did, but today, the sight of him made me sick. Without a word, I tossed my phone on the table in front of him, the video playing. "Care to explain?" Paul looked at the screen, his eyes going hard when he saw what was on it. He muted it, placed it calmly on the counter, and then looked straight at me. "Yeah, she's beautiful," he said, his voice dripping venom. "You used to be like that." I felt the slap of his words, my cheeks flaming with anger, my body tense. "So that's it, huh? You parade around town with some woman while I'm at home?" Paul stood up, his chair scraping back against the tile. He was too close now, his voice low and mean. "What, you stalking me now, Marie? Can't handle the fact that maybe there's more out there than what's inside these walls?" I was reeling, feeling the pieces click together. "Cut the crap, Paul. You're cheating." He didn't even flinch. "You want to know why?" he said, his chest puffing up. "Because around her, I'm someone. Not just the guy who pays the bills or the bad guy, 'cause he ain't Mr. Rogers." "So that's it?" I edged back, feeling the counter dig into my hips. "Your family's not enough for you?" Paul snorted and grabbed his beer again. "It stopped being enough a long time ago. Maybe if you'd have kept up with yourself, I wouldn't have to look elsewhere." The bile rattled in my throat. "I'm not the one who promised till death do us part." His laugh was short and punched the air. "Those are just words, Marie. They stopped meaning anything to you a long time ago." I should have been crying, but the tears wouldn't come. I was just empty and angry. "I gave you everything, Paul. I gave you a son. I made a home for us, and this is how you repay me?" He took a long drink, then leaned back against the counter. "You gave me a home. Looks like a prison to me. Same old, every damn day. You think that's a life?" "We made vows, Paul," I shouted, my voice cracking. "Yeah, and you broke them every day with your sweatpants and constant nagging." His face twisted into something ugly, something monstrous. That was the last thing he said before I walked out. My heart numb, anger seeping into every corner of my being. I was on edge the whole ride over to Paul's folks' place. It was going to be nasty, but I had to lay it out for them. They needed to know who their son really was. His mom answered the door with a happy smile. "Marie, what brings you here at this hour?" I just barreled past her. "I've got to show you both something." Once his dad came in, I played them the video, straight up. His mom gasped, her hand flying to cover her mouth, his dad reddening and looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. "He's got to stop this nonsense now," he barked at me. And like that, all hell broke loose. That night, back at our place, Paul kicked off as soon as I walked in. "You had to drag my parents into this, didn't you?" His voice was loaded, ready to fire. "Yeah, well, someone's got to," I shot back, my nerves steel. He was a storm brewing with a step towards me, his hand raised, but he didn't get far. "You're bad." Jack's voice cut through, strong and braver than any of us. Paul stopped stone cold. Paul's hand dropped and his mask slipped for a second, shock in his eyes, but then he hardened up again, cold as steel. "I want you out," he said, spitting the words like they were sour. "Take the kid and go." So we went, with Jack's hand in mine. I didn't look back. Bags thrown in the back of the car, we headed for the city, miles of road unwinding like my thoughts. The luxury house was something else, my unexpected inheritance. 2 stories, white columns, and a porch you could throw a party on, all waiting in another city, away from everything that had gone wrong. None of my folks, not even a whisker of Paul or his clan, had ever set eyes on it. When we pulled up to this grand house, Jack's face pressed to the window, eyes as wide as the moon. "Is this a castle?" His voice was a whisper, almost lost in the vastness of it all. "Something like that," I said, a laugh escaping me for the first time in I couldn't even remember. We stepped into that house, our new beginning. It was silent, safe for the echo of our footsteps on the marble floors, bouncing off the high ceilings, crowned with crystal chandeliers. The furniture was swanky, left behind by folks I wished had lasted a lifetime longer. I plopped down on a couch soft as clouds, and finally, Jack's laughter filled the rooms. The sound of it was more luxurious than anything else in this place. We explored room after room, Jack running ahead like he was leading a parade. Each new door opened to a room grander than the last. "I call the biggest one," he declared, claiming a bedroom that overlooked a garden already blooming with the promise of spring. Laying him down to bed that night, the day finally caught up with me. My eyes burned with the tiredness of it all. But looking around at the high ceilings, the gold trimming catching moonlight, I knew we were worlds away from where we started. Sitting there in the quiet of a room too nice for today's shadows, I whispered into the darkness, "We made it, kiddo." Life in the big house slowly shed the shadows of the past. Jack's giggles filled the halls more than the echoes of old fears. Most days, it felt like we had always been there, just the 2 of us in our new safe haven. The house, with its silent strength, was keeping the world at bay. Until the day Paul showed up, uninvited and unwelcome. He was at the door in a storm of anger. I opened it, and there he was, looking like trouble had followed him around. "You can't just disappear with my son, Marie." I leaned against the doorframe unfazed. "He's my son too, and I didn't disappear. I moved on." Paul's scowl deepened. He glanced around, taking in the opulence of the place with wide, disbelieving eyes. "How can you afford this? I know you don't make this kind of dough." I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from smiling. "Well, turns out I had a little left over each month. Who knew?" He raised an eyebrow, a sly accusation in his gaze. "And I'm struggling to cover rent for that old place by myself. It's damn near impossible now that they jacked up the price." I shook my head. He always was good at playing the martyr. "That's not my problem anymore, Paul. I've been using my own savings to cover the gap in the rent for years. Savings that, thank God, I don't need to bleed dry for that house anymore." The greed in his eyes flared up like wildfire. "What? And you're living here in luxury while I—" "Stop right there," I cut in. "This isn't your concern. This, I motioned to the grand house behind me, is mine. Mine and Jack's. Paul took a step forward, but I didn't back down. Look, I came here to fix things. I'm saying I forgive you for all this sneaking around. His audacity almost knocked the wind out of me, but I had a little surprise that would put the brakes on his charade. From behind the door, I pulled out the divorce papers and slapped them into his chest. And here's what I'm saying. We're done. He looked as if I'd slapped him with a physical hand, his face twisting through confusion, rage, and then settling on calculating desperation. You can't do this. What about Jack? I stood taller, my resolve like iron. I'm doing it for Jack. He doesn't need this chaos you bring. Sign the papers, Paul. It's over. He glanced from the papers to me, then back again, his posture deflating slightly. You'll regret this. You can't make it alone, he said. That's where you're wrong. I smiled. Not from humor, but from a deep-seated confidence. I'm already making it, and without you. We're doing more than just fine. We're thriving. With a shake of his head, Paul looked like he wanted to say more, but he didn't. Instead, he turned on his heel and strode away, clutching the papers like they were a snake that could bite. Once he was gone, the house seemed to exhale with me. I closed the door gently, turning back to the life I had fought so hard for. Life had a way of tossing stuff at you hard and fast. It was Thursday, the kind of day that should have been easy, but it wasn't. We shelved dinner for a bit, setting up ramps out of old books and watching the Lego car stupidly do flips and land upside down. Jack's laugh was infectious, the sort that wiped clean the worry lines off my face. His enthusiasm was a reminder that amid all the crap, there was still good, simple, unadulterated good. Then it came, a banging on the door that made my stomach drop and my face lose all its motherly warmth. Paul had a knack for bad timing and worse entrances. I pulled the door open, and there he was, looking like Traubel had followed him around. You can't just disappear with my son, Mary, he said. Jack peered from behind me, a knight in Lego armor. Hey, screw off, Paul. Don't talk to my mom like that. Jack's voice cut through, strong and braver than any of us. Paul's face turned a nice shade of tomato. The hell? You let him talk like that? Paul's anger was something else, a storm that had nowhere to go. You think you're smart, huh? Talking to your old man like that? Jack squared his shoulders, a small David to Paul's Goliath. Don't gotta think I know it. Mom knows it, he said. Paul opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Jack was staring him down, waiting. This was no place for Paul anymore, no place for his bluster and noise. After a tense moment, Paul shook his head, muttered something under his breath, and stormed off the porch. Jack turned to me with this look, the kind of look that said, "We got this." I nodded, all the agreement he needed. We went back to boiling pasta and racing Lego cars. That's how we do it, simple. Nothing fancy. We just keep on. I was gabbing on the phone with Miss Doy, Paul's mom, who was more family to me than he was. Honey, you just holler if there's anything you need. Her voice was always a warm blanket over the line. We're all good, Miss Doy, really. Couldn't be better, I assured her, twisting the cord around my finger. Just makes my heart full to hear that. Keep on keepin' on, she hummed a pleased note. Just expect a pie on your doorstep soon, I laughed, exchanging a few more pleasantries before we hung up. I shook my head. If someone had told me last year I'd be mining gold from the wreckage of my married life, I would have laughed in their face. Jack pulled on my sleeve, waving his drawing like a five-star general. "Look, Mom, this is our house." I looked down. His scribbles had heart, a big square house and two stick figures, a little one and a tall one, with sloppy grins and a lopsided sun shining down. "That's us, right?" I asked. A dumb question, really, but it made him nod with pride. "And I'm going to sell my art. Make us rich." There was serious conviction behind his toothy smile. "If you do, you're buying me that fancy coffee I've been eating." I nudged him with a wink. He nodded, his expression all business. "Only the best for my mom," he said. And just like that, the knot in my chest loosened a bit more. Sundays were like that, full of little miracles. The thing was, life had done a real number on us, but it was looking up. Paul got slammed by the door. He let hit him on his way out. The fancy house he rented to impress his mistress turned out to be a couple of sizes too big for his wallet. Now he was cooped up in a tiny apartment, the kind of place his pride wouldn't have let him consider a year ago. And the mistress? She hightailed it the minute his pockets turned up empty and his promises hollow. But that was a tale for some other time. Right now it was about Jack and me, and the park we were marching to hand in hand. We stepped out, and the door clicked shut, a soft full stop to one chapter before immediately kicking off the next. Jack tugged me towards the park, his excitement bubbling over. I didn't glance back at our home. There was no need. Ahead was everything that mattered, me and my boy. Parts of a world that kept on spinning even when you felt like you'd fallen off.
You promised you would leave when I returned, didn't you? The month is almost over. Let's handle the last task, hand over the divorce papers. Next to my ex-husband stood a woman and a child. The woman was holding hands with a child of about preschool age. Let me introduce you, this is my new wife Michelle. Michelle was still young and quite flashy. As I said earlier, we are strangers now, you no longer have the right to be in this house. My ex-husband said this and then suddenly flashed an unpleasant smirk. Sign the divorce papers, and your son and you get out of the house. His gaze looked down upon my son Ted and me, gleaming with triumph. He believed everything was going according to his plan. So, when he learned the truth, he collapsed on the spot. How could you do this, thinking you were just a homemaker who knew nothing? As he muttered, Ted said in disbelief. What? Dad, you know nothing? When Ted showed him a book, he became half frantic. My name is Ashley Manning. I am 42 years old. A part-time homemaker. I have a 16-year-old son with my husband, Robin, who works for a trading company. He travels frequently for work, both domestically and internationally. And I have mostly raised our son on my own. Currently, my husband is on a solo assignment, so we are nearly separated. And we mostly communicate through online calls or messages. The distance is too far for a day trip though within the country. He only comes home during Easter, summer vacation, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. Even then, we hardly spend quiet time as a family of 3, just dropping by the in-laws' home, which is about an hour's drive away. I think my relationship with my husband is neither particularly good nor bad. After many years of marriage, even couples who live together might find this to be quite normal. There is familial love, but no romantic passion between us as a couple. His workplace is a major trading company, so we haven't had any financial difficulties. Because my husband was often away, I stayed at home full-time when Ted was younger to make sure he wasn't lonely, which my husband agreed to. However, as Ted reached the upper grades of elementary school, and my husband started living separately due to his assignment, Ted seemed to find me somewhat bothersome. I recall my brother was the same at that age, it seems to be a phase they go through. That made me want to find a job. It's fine to work, but I don't want to be seen as incompetent. That was the first thing he said when I talked about wanting to work. Maybe choose a job that feels like an extension of your hobbies. Something that feels like an upgrade. I was fine with any job as long as the workplace suited me. But I considered his opinion and decided to assist at a flower arrangement class. I have a license in flower arrangement. And since many of my husband's work colleagues are foreigners, it seemed useful. Nice, that will be useful even when I'm transferred abroad. My husband agreed, so I continued that part-time job. Financially, we were not struggling. But I still wanted to have a serious conversation with him about our son's future.
Yeah.
I was also thinking we need to talk about the future seriously. I was relieved by his response. Ted is a freshman in high school and will be advancing to the next grade this fall. It's about time to seriously decide on his career path. I'm supposed to return to the head office this fall. It's the right time with the school advancements and all. But the future matters my husband talked about. When he returned for the Easter holiday was unexpected. I want a divorce. He started the conversation without giving a reason first. We've been living apart for a long time now, and that's enough reason for a divorce. It's not too late for both of us to start a new life. Wait. That's so sudden. This is indeed a bolt from the blue. I hurriedly interrupted his words. Living apart? That was just because of your solo assignment. I never thought of it as living apart. But you didn't come with me, did you? That was because of Ted's school and also your father. My father-in-law is alive and well, living alone in a senior citizen's apartment. Originally, the house we live in was my husband's family home. But when we got married, his parents moved out to that apartment. My husband didn't have a good relationship with his father. While his mother was alive, he still kept in touch with his parents. But after her death, he stopped all contact. I told you to leave that man alone, didn't I? He's in a proper facility and doesn't need us to take care of him. I can't just ignore him like that. The estrangement between my husband and his father wasn't due to any particular reason. It was the accumulation of minor issues over many years. And even among family members, relationships can sometimes not work out. Both his father and the late mother were very kind people. That's why I had been close to them both. And kept in touch with my father-in-law even after he was left alone. I visit him at the apartment occasionally. That was something you did on your own, right? I never asked for it. That was indeed true, but it's not something that can be so easily dismissed. It's the same with Ted's school. If you had wanted to, he could have transferred schools. Wasn't it you who wanted Ted to enroll in that school? Ted had gone through the so-called entrance exams and entered a school that provided education straight through to university. I wanted it too, but if you really wanted to, you could have transferred schools, right? That's true, but you can't just do that. That means you chose not to live with me. So, please handle this. He said this as he handed me a completed divorce paper. I've come back, but you can't stay with me in this state. I'll stay at a hotel. Leaving those words behind, he left the house. I was left behind, stunned. Why are you sitting in the dark? Where's Dad? Ted had been out watching a movie with friends that day. He returned home late at night. My husband had come and gone in the mid-afternoon. It seemed I had just sat there for hours. What's this? Ted picked up the divorce papers that were still on the coffee table. What should I do? How should I explain this? I still hadn't gathered my thoughts, and I didn't know what to say to him. Seeing me frozen, Ted sighed, put down the divorce papers, and left. Oh, I would be abandoned by not only my husband but also my son. As I sat there stunned, Ted came back quickly. Eat something. If you're hungry, you can't think straight. Eat well, sleep well, and then we can think about what to do next. Saying that, he offered a plate with 2 big sandwiches. They were big but not in good shape, obviously made with effort. Thinking that, tears began to spill from my eyes. Just eat, will you? Ted pretended not to see my tears and urged me to eat, and I ate the sandwiches through my tears. The simple sandwiches tasted better than any delicacy I had ever had. After returning to his assignment, my husband sent several messages. They went something like this. I want to get divorced by next fall. I'll properly pay child support for Ted until he is an adult. Adulthood starts at 18 now, but since he will turn 18 while in high school, I'll take care of him until he graduates. The message was a list of words as if he was doing me a favor by paying. Ted isn't just my child, but our child. How can he so arrogantly speak of his minimum obligations? I will be back from my assignment this fall and will live in that house. Make sure you are prepared to move out by then. 6 months should be enough time to find a suitable place. I'm generous enough to pay for the moving expenses. If I need to move from the house I had lived in for many years, I will surely make him pay. However, I can't see why I need to leave. Why must I leave this house? The reason for the divorce is that the marriage has naturally broken down. So I think I don't need to pay any money to you. But I recognize your long-term dedication as a homemaker. And I am willing to pay some support money. Of course, I won't ask for any money from you. I see no reason why I should pay him. I wasn't just living for fun. We were living apart, but when my husband couldn't come back, I would visit him with Ted at his assignment, and we interacted like a normal family. I cannot accept natural breakdown as a reason. If you say you can't make a living with your current job, I'm willing to help you find a job. But in that case, you'll need to leave this town. I assume you wouldn't enjoy running into me either. My current job as a flower arrangement assistant isn't enough to make a living. But being told to leave this town and find a job elsewhere is something I cannot accept. Why must I do such a thing? I'll give you custody of Ted. He would be more comfortable with you since you've been together for so long. Plus, he's nearing adulthood and shouldn't rely on his parents forever. If Ted needs me, I'm willing to help with some matters, but I won't demand any visits. If we do get divorced, I surely intend to take custody of Ted. But reading this, it seems like my husband is even trying to abandon his son. How can he be so devoid of emotion? How hurt Ted would be if he knew all this. I sighed after reading everything, finding none of the reasons acceptable. What an unreasonable argument. I was shocked and desperate when I was told about the divorce. But I have started to think I am better off without such a selfish person. I went to his place of assignment to talk. It was during work hours, but I have a key to his apartment. As I entered, the room was as neat as usual. It was as if no one lived there. He's always been meticulous, but it really looked like a show apartment. As I waited in the room, my husband came home in the evening. You were here? If you were coming, you should have called. He said grumpily. Did you bring the signed divorce papers today? I'm done with it, you could just file them yourself. Without even looking at me, he took off his suit jacket and tie. He meticulously hung each item on hangers, smoothing out the wrinkles. He was always like this. I remembered the times we lived together. Everything was so proper, without any flaws. What, you thought there might be a woman here? Sorry to disappoint. There was indeed no such indication. What about dinner? I've already eaten, as usual. It's been a while since I enjoyed a homemade meal at home. He said sarcastically, then took a cold beer from the fridge, sat at the table, and started drinking. You understand now why I said I wanted a divorce. I'm tired of living like this for years. Then you should have just said you wanted me to come. Ted is there, and even though you say it's just a part-time job, you've started working and have a rhythm to your life. I can't just ask you to drop everything and come. He said this and took another sip of his beer. Living like this, I suddenly thought one day. Maybe it's okay not to have a family. It seems he is insisting that the separation due to his solo assignment is the cause of the divorce. Then could you at least wait until Ted graduates from high school? It's only 2 more years, no, just 1.5 years left. No, I want a divorce by next fall. What happens next fall? My husband reacted slightly to these unexpected words. I told you, I'm supposed to return to the head office. I thought it was a good opportunity. Can't we live as a family for just that much longer, at least for the last year? No, it has to be by next fall. The discussion was at a deadlock, and he insisted on having the divorce by next fall no matter what. Unable to do anything, I left his room, stayed at a hotel that night, and decided to go home the next day. I couldn't bear to spend any more time alone with my husband in that room. After that, I never visited his place again. I realized it was futile. Important matters were handled via messages that would remain on record. And I started to prepare for various things as fall approached. First was negotiating unacceptable aspects of my husband's proposal. I wanted him to continue providing for Ted's education until he graduated from college. If he didn't agree, I wouldn't sign the divorce papers. That triggered an angry phone call from him. I said until he's 18. If you don't like that, I won't pay any child support after the divorce. That's impossible because we are still married until I submit the divorce papers. Besides, you have a duty to pay child support until Ted becomes an adult. After several exchanges on this issue, he finally gave in. Fine, I'll pay for his tuition until he graduates from college, but only for 4 years. If he fails and has to repeat a year, I won't pay for anything beyond that. Understood, I appreciate it for the 4 years. Please make that into a notarized document. Are you saying you don't trust me? Of course, that's a given. I can't trust a man who suddenly pushes for a divorce for such reasons. I never know when he might change his mind. If you won't listen, we'll go to mediation, and if that doesn't work, to court. That made him agree to put it in a notarized document. But I won't pay any other money for the divorce. Yes, that's fine. Of course, I won't pay any either. Good, then hurry up and submit the divorce papers. Each time he said it, I challenged him with aspects of the divorce terms I couldn't accept. About the division of property that needs to be properly handled too. I've been supporting you, who doesn't work. Do you still plan to take more? I wasn't being supported. I was raising your child. If you're going to call me an unemployed parasite, we'll start with mediation and go to court if necessary. After saying this, although reluctantly, he agreed to the property division. And of course, that was put into a notarized document too. He was a high earner, so it was a significant amount. You've taken enough now, just submit the divorce papers already. Oh, it's okay to wait until next fall, right? Something might still come up, so please wait. If you think delaying will make me withdraw the divorce, you're wrong. As fall approached, my husband increasingly couldn't hide his irritation. Why are you so irritated? It doesn't matter if it's slightly delayed, right? It matters a lot. Is there some urgent reason? If there is, please tell me, and I'll consider it. Even when I offered concessions, he said there was nothing of the sort. So, I think there's no problem if I don't agree to the divorce until I'm satisfied. Right now, I hold the cards. I intend to play them as I see fit. As I hesitated to sign the divorce papers, I moved forward with various tasks. And the months flew by. When will you submit the divorce papers? It's already July. My husband, who hadn't come home for Easter, said this impatiently. Yes, it's July now. But there are still a few months until fall, and a little delay shouldn't be a problem. I'm repeatedly telling you to do it definitely by next fall. I want to have the divorce settled before I return to the head office. Even if you say that, it's hard to make up my mind and there's a lot to do. I deftly dodged my husband's demands. And you've already decided where you'll live, right? Don't worry, that's already settled. Good, because I'll be commuting from that house starting the new fiscal year. Relieved, my husband let out a genuine sigh. Take care on your way back. Even so, Ted and you will be leaving the house in turn with me. Remember, it's not like I'm going back to your place. I already know that without being told. I no longer intend to accept this man as family. And in the last week of September, my husband came home. All sorts of arrangements have been made, but the divorce papers have not yet been submitted. You promised to leave when I returned, right? And now the month is almost over, time for the last task, handing over the divorce papers. A woman and a child were next to my husband. The woman was holding hands with a child about preschool age. Let me introduce you, this is my new wife Michelle. Michelle was still young and quite flashy. Nice to meet you, is this your son? Michelle awkwardly hid the child behind her. What's your name, sweetie? Hey, stop. That's none of your business. My husband said this while shielding the child. Like I said earlier, we're strangers now, you no longer have any right to be in this house. He said this and suddenly flashed an unpleasant smirk. Sign the divorce papers, and your son and you get out of the house. His gaze was looking down at Ted and me, shining with a triumphant light. So that's what it was. What does it matter, all sorts of arrangements should have been finished. Just submit the divorce papers, and that's it, we agreed not to ask for any compensation, right? I'm relieved to hear that. I heard you've received a lot from Robin. So there's no need to feel guilty anymore. Her last words seemed to be directed at my husband.
Yeah.
That's right. I really wanted to have registered by today, I'm truly sorry about that. But it seems we'll make it in time for Sean's school entry. Yes, the reason my husband rushed the divorce. It was to ensure the child he had with Michelle could start school on time as a proper family. As a parent, I can understand wanting to enroll the child in elementary school properly. But that's a separate issue from this one. I told my husband and Michelle. Actually, I already submitted the divorce papers this morning. Here, this is the certificate. I handed the e-acceptance certificate of the divorce papers to my husband. As long as I have this, no problem. My husband showed it to Michelle, and the two of them nodded in satisfaction. Then our talk is over, there's no need for you to be here anymore, get out quickly. About that, Ted and I have the right to live here, you're the one who should leave. Don't talk nonsense, this is my house. Poor husband, he doesn't know. I need to educate him properly. Whose name is this house under? That would be my father's. What's his is mine. Wrong, it's in my name. Hearing this, my husband's face showed a moment of surprise, but he quickly laughed and said, You must be confused because you think you have residency rights, that it's in your name? I wouldn't make such a silly mistake. Once we're divorced, you have no relation to my father. Which means you no longer have the right to live here. Sighing, I presented another document. What is this? His eyes widened as he looked at the document. I've been adopted by your father. He decided to leave this house to me. What I showed my husband was the certificate of adoption. My name was clearly written as an adopted child. That's ridiculous. See, it's true, isn't it? Your father did this because I've always cared about him. After my husband brought up divorce, I consulted with my father-in-law. My own parents had both died not long after I got married. My in-laws treated me like their own daughter. That's why I cared for them dearly, far more than their actual son, my husband. My father-in-law had suggested I thoroughly investigate, so he hired a detective agency. They discovered my husband had a mistress and a secret child. You wanted a solo assignment to live with her, didn't you? Michelle had met my husband while working at a nightclub. She was only 20 at the time but quickly became close to my husband. And they developed a deep relationship. Then she became pregnant. My husband decided to lead a double life to live with Michelle and their child. I visited your solo assignment location several times. But now I understand why I never saw any sign of a woman. My husband had 2 houses at his assignment. One home was for living with them, your sweet home. The other was a camouflage to deceive us, so we wouldn't realize there was a woman. After my husband was assigned alone, I visited several times with Ted. I always admired how clean you kept it. But of course, you weren't really living there. My husband had even installed cameras in that house. And he received notifications whenever someone entered the room. When your father found out how deceitful that was, he was furious and decided he would leave nothing to you. And everything would go to Ted instead, and offered me to be adopted. This can't be. My husband probably believed everything was going according to his plans. But he collapsed on the spot when he learned the truth. Do you understand disinheritance? Your father is processing that. What is that? Simply put, it means excluding you as an heir from your father's inheritance. If the process is completed, you will officially no longer be an heir. And the inheritance will pass by representation to Ted. There's a way to exclude an heir if the person leaving the property decides, for some reason, that they shouldn't inherit. In this case, my father-in-law decided to do so because of the almost estranged relationship with his son and the appalling way he treated his family. When my husband loses his qualification as an heir, Ted, as the grandson, will be recognized as a subsequent heir. If my husband disputes this decision, he could file a lawsuit. For that potential situation, my father-in-law decided to adopt me and give me the house as a gift during his lifetime. Your father and I decided to do this after consulting. How can you do something like this? Thinking you were just a homemaker who knew nothing. As he muttered, Ted spoke up in disbelief. What? Dad, you don't know anything? Ted handed a book to him. Mrs. Rose's Brilliant Reasoning? What is this book? I know it. It's a popular light novel right now. It's going to be animated soon. I'm reading it too. I love it. That book, Mom wrote it. She studied a lot to write it, including about the law. Both were stunned by Ted's words. Indeed, I was the homemaker my husband thought I was. Someone who had never done anything worldly. But I loved writing and had been secretly posting novels online without my husband knowing. And using the flower arrangement class I attended part-time as a setting. I wrote a series where Mrs. Rose, the assistant and homemaker, solved difficult cases one after another, which became a big hit. I haven't heard such a story. There's talk of it being animated, and I was just about to confess to you. But then you brought up divorce first. What a pity. Then the royalties from that book are marital property. Right? How much will you make from the adaptation of cartoons? We need to properly divide that wealth too, right? Unfortunately, I have already submitted the divorce papers. Royalties and income from the adaptation of cartoons are no longer any of your concern. Hearing this, my husband yelled out loud, repeating that's a lie over and over. What a foolish man. The moment you realize I have value after years of belittling, deceiving, and trying to drive me out, you come with this? If you have anything to say, Talk to my lawyer from now on. Now, please leave immediately. With that, I quickly kicked my husband and Michelle out of the house. I felt sorry for little Sean, but there was nothing I could do for him. My husband repeatedly asked for reconciliation, but there was no way I would accept that. More importantly, make sure you acknowledge Sean properly. He's starting elementary school soon, right? It's cruel to leave it as it is. Later, Michelle also pressed for Sean's acknowledgement, and they officially became a family. It was only right for the sake of the child. After the elementary school entrance ceremony, once their lives had settled, my husband contacted me. You're making a good profit, right? Then cut me some slack on child support, make it like it never happened. Despite such ridiculous requests, I of course rejected them. When I told him that refusal of payment would lead to mediation or court, he quietly agreed to pay. It seems my husband borrowed the money from his company, though he managed to secure a loan from the company, thinking he could keep working at the headquarters and repay it unnoticed. But somehow his actions became known to the company. Moreover, it became clear that his request for a solo assignment was for such purposes. Heaven's vengeance is slow but sure. As the saying goes, the heavens are watching. The higher-ups in the company were furious when they discovered he had used such immoral purposes. As a result, he was demoted and sent to a subsidiary in a rural area. His salary decreased, and now he and his wife are working desperately to repay their debts. But perhaps it was for the best. In a new place, Sean can start as a normal family without anyone knowing he was born under such circumstances. An innocent child shouldn't suffer for his parents' actions. As for me, after the divorce, my work was successfully adapted into a cartoon and sparked a minor craze. Merchandise was developed, and in an era where ebooks are becoming mainstream, my paper book, with a supplement, sold exceptionally well. The editor keeps asking me for the next work. My life is busy, leaving no room to dwell on past hurts. Cartoons are hugely popular all over the world. My work is broadcast here and there, receiving significant feedback internationally. Ted has grown up straight despite everything. He will start university this fall, and during those 4 years, he told me he wants to find what he truly wants to do and his own strength, just like I did. Whatever happens, it's my life, so I won't rely on Mom too much. He says such cheeky things, but as a parent, I'd be happy if he relied on me just a bit. Maybe I'll write a new story with a cheeky college student as the protagonist. I have a feeling the next work will also be a hit. I think this to myself as I watch my capable son.
I never thought I'd be in this position, standing in our living room, my heart pounding as I confront my husband of 10 years. Trent's voice echoes from the kitchen, his laughter grating on my nerves as he boasts over the phone about his latest financial scheme. "You wouldn't believe how easy it was to pull one over on her," he chuckles. "Aaliyah's so focused on her little part-time job at the library, she has no idea what I've been doing with our money." My blood boils as I listen to him mock my efforts to contribute to our household. I step into the kitchen, my eyes narrowed. "What exactly have you been doing with our money, Trent?" He spins around, his expression shifting from surprise to annoyance. "I've got to go," he mutters into the phone before hanging up. "What's with the interrogation, Aaliyah? I'm just trying to make sure we're set for the future." "By manipulating our finances behind my back?" I counter, my voice rising. "We agreed on a plan, Trent. What happened to saving for our retirement, for our kids' education?" He scoffs, waving his hand dismissively. "Your little library job isn't going to cut it, Aaliyah. I'm the one bringing in the real money here. If you want to be useful, why don't you quit and focus on taking care of the house?" His words cut deep, but I refuse to back down. "I may not make as much as you, but my job matters to me, and I have a right to know what's happening with our finances." Trent steps closer, his face hardening. "You don't need to worry about that. I've got it under control. Just trust me and stay in your lane. I shake my head, anger and betrayal coursing through me. I can't do that, Trent. Not when you're hiding things from me and making decisions that affect both of us without my input. He throws his hands up in exasperation. You're being ridiculous, Elia. I'm doing what's best for us, even if you can't see it. No, you're doing what's best for you, I retort, and I won't stand for it anymore. Trent's eyes narrow. What are you saying? I take a deep breath, my resolve strengthening. I'm saying that if you can't be honest with me and treat me as an equal partner, then maybe we need to rethink this marriage. He stares at me, his mouth agape. You can't be serious. I am, I say firmly. I won't be manipulated and belittled any longer. If you can't respect me and our agreements, then I'll have to find a way to protect myself and my future. Trent's face reddens, his fists clenching at his sides. You're making a mistake, Aaliyah. You need me. I meet his gaze, my voice steady. No, Trent, I need honesty, respect, and a partner who values me. And if you can't give me that, then I'll find my own way forward. With that, I turn and walk out of the kitchen, my heart racing, but my spirit unbroken. I know the road ahead won't be easy, but I refuse to let Trent's betrayal define me. I'll fight for my independence and reclaim the life I deserve, no matter what it takes. The hum of conversation fills the air as I step into my in-laws' backyard, the scent of barbecue wafting by. It's a typical family gathering, but the weight of my confrontation with Trent still lingers heavily on my mind. I spot his sister Marla and make my way over, hoping to find an ally in the midst of this turmoil. Marla, can I talk to you for a moment? I ask, my voice low. She turns, her brow furrowing at my serious tone. Sure, Aaliyah. What's up? I glance around, ensuring we have some privacy. It's about Trent. I recently found out he's been hiding things from me, making financial decisions behind my back. Marla's expression shifts, a flicker of discomfort crossing her face. Oh, I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding, Aaliyah. You know how Trent is, always trying to do what's best for the family. I shake my head, frustration bubbling up inside me. No, Marla, it's more than that. He's been manipulating our finances, putting our future at risk. I need your support in this. She averts her gaze, fidgeting with her drink. I don't know, Aaliyah. Trent's mentioned some things about your spending habits. Maybe you two just need to communicate better. My jaw clenches, realization dawning on me. What exactly has Trent been saying about me? Marla hesitates, her discomfort palpable. He's just concerned, Aaliyah. He says you've been irresponsible with money, that your job at the library isn't contributing enough. Anger surges through me, my voice rising. That's not true, Marla. I've been nothing but responsible. Trent's the one who's been lying and hiding things. She takes a step back, her eyes widening at my outburst. Calm down, Aaliyah. I'm sure Trent has his reasons. Maybe you're just overreacting. I stare at her in disbelief, the sting of betrayal intensifying. Overreacting? My husband is spreading lies about me to his own family, and you think I'm overreacting? Marla shifts uncomfortably, glancing around at the other family members who are starting to take notice of our heated exchange. Look, Aaliyah, I don't want to get in the middle of this. You and Trent need to work it out yourselves. I laugh bitterly, shaking my head. I came to you for support, Marla. I thought you, of all people, would understand, but I see now that Trent has you all fooled. She opens her mouth to respond, but I hold up my hand, cutting her off. Save it. I don't need your judgment or your excuses for Trent's behavior. I'll handle this on my own. I turn on my heel, ignoring the curious stares from the rest of the family as I make my way back inside the house. My heart pounds in my chest, a mixture of anger and determination coursing through me. I find Trent in the kitchen, laughing with his brother. He looks up as I approach, his smile fading at the sight of my expression. Aaliyah, what's wrong? What's wrong? I echo, my voice trembling with barely contained rage. What's wrong is that you've been lying to your family about me, painting me as some irresponsible spender, while you hide your own financial misdeeds. Trent's face hardens, his eyes narrowing. I don't know what you're talking about, Aaliyah. I've only ever tried to protect you, to do what's best for us. I scoff, my hands curling into fists at my sides. Protect me? By undermining me and spreading lies? No, Trent, you're only protecting yourself and your own selfish interests. He takes a step towards me, his voice lowering. Be careful what you say, Aaliyah. You don't want to make a scene in front of everyone. I meet his gaze, my resolve unwavering. I'm done being careful, Trent. I'm done letting you control the narrative. From now on, I'm taking control of my own life, my own future, and I won't let you or anyone else stand in my way. With that, I brush past him, ignoring his calls for me to come back. I step out into the backyard, my head held high despite the whispers and stares. Let them talk, let them judge. I know the truth, and I won't be silenced any longer. The library has always been my sanctuary, a place where I can escape the chaos of my personal life and find solace among the stacks. But today, as I sit at my desk, my mind is far from the books that surround me. I can't shake the nagging feeling that Trent's deception runs deeper than I initially thought. I pull up our online banking statements, my eyes scanning the transactions. At first glance, everything seems normal, but as I delve deeper, I notice a series of large withdrawals that I don't recognize. My heart sinks as I realize the money has been transferred to an account I've never seen before. With trembling fingers, I dial the bank's customer service number. After a series of automated prompts, I finally reach a representative. Hello, my name is Aaliyah Thompson. I'm calling about some unusual activity on my account. The representative asks for my information and pulls up my account. Miss Thompson, I see a recent transfer to an investment account. Was this not authorized by you? I take a deep breath, trying to steady my voice. No, it wasn't. Can you tell me more about this investment account? There's a pause on the other end of the line. I'm sorry, Miss Thompson, but the account is not in your name. It appears to be a business account opened by a Trent Thompson. My stomach drops, a wave of nausea washing over me. A business account? What business? The representative hesitates. I'm afraid I can't disclose that information, as you're not listed on the account, but I can tell you that a significant sum was recently transferred from your joint account to this business venture. I close my eyes, the pieces falling into place. Trent's secrecy, his dismissal of my concerns, his lies to his family. It all makes sense now. He's been using our money, my money, to fund some secret project behind my back. Anger courses through me, hot and intense. I thank the representative and hang up, my mind racing. I need proof, something tangible to confront Trent with. I can't let him get away with this. I spend the next hour combing through our financial records, printing out statements, and highlighting the suspicious transactions. By the time I'm done, I have a stack of evidence that even Trent can't deny. I'm just gathering my things to leave when a familiar voice cuts through the quiet of the library. Aaliyah, we need to talk. I look up to see Trent standing in the doorway, his expression a mixture of anger and annoyance. I'm busy, Trent. Can't this wait? He strides over to my desk, his eyes narrowing. No, it can't. I just got a call from the bank about you snooping around in our accounts. What the hell are you doing? I stand up, squaring my shoulders. I'm doing what you should have been doing all along, Trent, being honest and transparent about our finances. He scoffs, rolling his eyes. Oh, please, you're just being paranoid. I told you, I have everything under control. I slam the stack of papers down on the desk, the sound echoing through the empty library. Under control? Is that what you call taking out a second mortgage on our home without telling me? Is that what you call funneling our money into some secret business account? Trent's face pales, his mouth falling open. How did you? It doesn't matter how I know, Trent. What matters is that you've been lying to me, betraying my trust and putting our future at risk. He takes a step back, his expression hardening. You don't understand, Aaliyah. This business venture is going to change everything for us. I'm doing this for you, for our family. I laugh bitterly, shaking my head. No, Trent, you're doing this for yourself, and I won't stand by and watch you destroy everything we've built together. I gather up the papers, stuffing them into my bag. I'm going to find out exactly what you've been up to, Trent, and when I do, there will be consequences. With that, I brush past him, ignoring his calls for me to come back. I've had enough of his lies and manipulations. It's time for me to take control and fight for what's rightfully mine. The coffee shop is bustling with activity as I slide into a booth, my hands wrapped tightly around a steaming mug. Across from me sits my best friend, Sarah, her eyes filled with concern as she takes in my haggard appearance. Aaliyah, what's going on? You sounded so upset on the phone. Sarah reaches across the table, squeezing my hand. I take a deep breath, the events of the past few days spilling out in a rush. It's Trent. He's been lying to me, Sarah. He took out a second mortgage on our house without telling me and has been funneling money into some secret business account. Sarah's eyes widen, her mouth falling open. Oh my God, Aaliyah, that's terrible. What are you going to do? I shake my head, feeling overwhelmed. I don't know. I have proof of what he's been doing, but I don't know how to confront him without things getting ugly. Sarah leans forward, her expression determined. You can't let him get away with this, Aaliyah. You need to protect yourself and your assets. I nod, knowing she's right. I've been documenting everything, gathering evidence, but I feel like I need more support, someone who can guide me through this process. Sarah thinks for a moment, then snaps her fingers. I know someone who might be able to help. My cousin went through a nasty divorce last year, and she worked with this amazing financial advisor. Let me give her a call and see if she can recommend someone. Relief washes over me, grateful for Sarah's support. Thank you, Sarah. I don't know what I'd do without you. She smiles, squeezing my hand again. That's what friends are for, Aaliyah. We'll get through this together. A few days later, I find myself sitting in the office of a highly recommended financial advisor, Mr. Henderson. He listens intently as I outline my situation, his expression growing more serious with each revelation. Mrs. Thompson, I must say, your husband's actions are highly concerning. Taking out a second mortgage without your knowledge and investing in a business without your consent is a clear violation of your financial agreement. Mr. Henderson frowns, shaking his head. I nod, my stomach twisting. I know. I just don't know how to confront him without things escalating. Mr. Henderson leans forward, his voice calm but firm. The first step is to secure your own finances. I recommend opening a separate bank account in your name only and transferring a portion of your joint assets into it. This will ensure that you have access to funds should your husband attempt to freeze your accounts. I make a note, my hand trembling slightly. Okay, I can do that. What else? You mentioned that you have evidence of your husband's financial misdeeds. I strongly advise making copies of all relevant documents and storing them in a secure location, such as a safety deposit box. This will be crucial in building a case against him. I nod, feeling a sense of empowerment. I've been doing that. I have statements, receipts, everything. Mr. Henderson smiles, his eyes kind. Good. You're already taking the right steps, Mrs. Thompson. I know this is a difficult situation, but you're not alone. I'll be here to guide you through the process and help you protect your financial future. I leave Mr. Henderson's office feeling a renewed sense of determination. I know the road ahead won't be easy, but with allies like Sarah and Mr. Henderson by my side, I feel ready to face whatever challenges come my way. That evening, as I sit at the kitchen table, surrounded by piles of financial documents, Trent walks in, his eyes narrowing at the sight. What's all this? He asks, his voice tight. I look up, meeting his gaze steadily. This is me taking control of my life, Trent. I know about the second mortgage, the secret business account, and I won't let you destroy our future any longer. Trent's face reddens, his fists clenching at his sides. You have no idea what you're talking about, Aaliyah. I'm doing what's best for us, even if you can't see it. I stand up, squaring my shoulders. No, Trent, you're doing what's best for you, and I won't be a part of it anymore. I gather up the documents, brushing past him. I'm fighting back, Trent, and I won't stop until I've reclaimed what's mine. With that, I walk out of the room, leaving Trent stunned and silent behind me. The battle lines have been drawn, and I'm ready for war. The sun is barely peeking through the curtains as I sit at the kitchen table, a stack of papers and a cup of coffee in front of me. I've been up for hours, going over the evidence I've gathered against Trent. Bank statements, receipts, emails, all painting a damning picture of his deceit and betrayal. I'm jolted from my thoughts by the sound of the front door opening. Trent strolls in, whistling off-key, his face breaking into a smile when he sees me. Morning, babe. You're up early. I take a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation to come. We need to talk, Trent. His smile falters, his eyes darting to the papers on the table. What's all this? I stand up, crossing my arms. This is evidence, Trent. Evidence of your lies and your financial infidelity. Trent's face hardens, his posture defensive. I don't know what you're talking about, Aaliyah. I've been nothing but honest with you. I scoff, shaking my head. Really? Then how do you explain the second mortgage you took out on our house without telling me? Or the secret business account you've been funneling our money into? He takes a step back, his eyes widening. How did you? It doesn't matter how I know, Trent. What matters is that you've been lying to me, hiding things from me, and I won't stand for it anymore. Trent's expression shifts, his mouth twisting into a sneer. You don't understand, Aaliyah. I'm doing this for us, for our future. You should be grateful. I laugh bitterly, tears stinging my eyes. Grateful? For what? For you putting our financial security at risk? For you betraying my trust and treating me like I'm nothing more than an inconvenience? He takes a step towards me, his voice lowering. Watch yourself, Aaliyah. You don't want to push me too far. I stand my ground, meeting his gaze head on. No, Trent. You're the one who's gone too far, and I'm done being your doormat. I gather up the papers, shoving them into a folder. I've hired a private investigator, Trent, someone who's going to dig into every dirty little secret you've been hiding. Trent's face pales, his hands clenching into fists. You're making a mistake, Aaliyah. You don't want to go down this road. I brush past him, grabbing my purse. The only mistake I made was trusting you, but that ends now. I head for the door, my heart pounding in my chest. I'm halfway out when Trent's voice stops me. You'll regret this, Aaliyah, I promise you that. I turn back, my eyes blazing. The only thing I regret is wasting so many years on a lying, manipulative bastard like you. With that, I slam the door behind me, the cool morning air hitting my face. I take a deep breath, feeling a sense of liberation wash over me. I know the road ahead won't be easy, but I'm ready to fight for what's mine. Later that day, I find myself in the office of the private investigator I've hired, a no-nonsense woman named Joan. She listens intently as I outline my suspicions, her pen scratching across a notepad. Based on what you've told me, Mrs. Thompson, it sounds like your husband has been engaging in some serious financial misconduct. Joan looks up, her eyes serious. I nod, my stomach twisting. I need proof, Joan. Something concrete that I can use against him. She nods, leaning back in her chair. I'll dig into his financials, his business dealings. If there's anything shady going on, I'll find it. I feel a sense of relief wash over me, grateful to have someone on my side. Thank you, Joan. I don't know what I'd do without your help. She smiles, her eyes kind. You're doing the right thing, Mrs. Thompson. Standing up for yourself, fighting back. It takes a lot of courage. I leave Joan's office feeling empowered, ready to face whatever challenges come my way. I know that with the evidence we gather, I'll be able to confront Trent and reclaim what's rightfully mine. That night, as I lie in bed, I can't help but feel a sense of anticipation. The wheels are in motion, and soon Trent will have to answer for his actions. I close my eyes, a smile playing at my lips. The game is on, and I'm playing to win. The mediator's office is cold and sterile, the fluorescent lights casting a harsh glare on the conference table. I sit across from Trent, my hands clasped tightly in my lap, a thick folder of evidence resting in front of me. He looks haggard, his usually polished appearance replaced by dark circles and a rumpled suit. The mediator, a stern-looking woman in her 50s, clears her throat. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, we're here today to discuss the terms of your divorce and the division of assets. I understand that there have been some disputes regarding finances. I nod, my voice steady. That's correct. My husband has been engaging in financial fraud and deceit, hiding assets and taking out loans without my knowledge or consent. Trent scoffs, rolling his eyes. That's ridiculous. I've done nothing wrong. I open the folder, pulling out a stack of documents. I have proof, Trent. Bank statements, emails, receipts, all showing the money you've been funneling into your secret business account. The mediator takes the documents, her eyes scanning the pages. These are serious allegations, Mr. Thompson. Do you have anything to say in your defense? Trent shifts in his seat, his eyes darting around the room. Those documents are taken out of context. I was simply trying to secure our financial future. I laugh bitterly, shaking my head. By lying to me? By putting our home at risk with a second mortgage? No, Trent. You were only looking out for yourself. He leans forward, his face twisting with anger. You have no idea what you're talking about, Aaliyah. You've never understood the sacrifices I've made for this family. I meet his gaze, unflinching. The only thing you've sacrificed is your integrity, Trent, and I won't let you get away with it any longer. The mediator holds up her hand, silencing us both. Mrs. Thompson, you mentioned having evidence gathered by a private investigator. May I see that as well? I nod, pulling out another stack of papers. This is just the tip of the iceberg. My investigator uncovered a pattern of financial misdeeds going back years. Secret investments, shell companies, all designed to hide assets from me. Trent's face pales, his hands clenching into fists. You had no right to dig into my private affairs, Aaliyah. This is a violation of my privacy. I scoff, rolling my eyes. You gave up your right to privacy the moment you started lying to me, Trent. The moment you betrayed our marriage vows. The mediator looks up from the papers, her expression grave. Mr. Thompson, in light of this evidence, I strongly advise you to come clean and agree to a fair division of assets. Continuing to deny wrongdoing will only make matters worse for you in court. Trent's jaw clenches, his eyes flashing with anger. This is all a misunderstanding. I won't be bullied into giving up what's rightfully mine. I lean forward, my voice low and steady. What's rightfully yours? You mean the money you stole from our joint accounts? The home you put at risk with your lies? No, Trent. You've forfeited any claim to those things. The mediator nods, her tone firm. Mrs. Thompson is correct, Mr. Thompson. Based on the evidence presented, you have engaged in serious financial misconduct. If you continue to contest the division of assets, I will have no choice but to recommend that this case proceed to trial, where a judge will likely rule in your wife's favor. Trent's shoulders slump, defeat etched on his face. Fine. What are your terms, Aaliyah? I sit back, a sense of triumph washing over me. I want the house, free and clear. I want a fair division of our savings and investments, and I want you to sign over your interest in the secret business account to me. He nods, his voice barely above a whisper. Okay, you win, Aaliyah. I gather up my papers, standing to leave. No, Trent, we both lose, but at least now the truth is out there, and I can finally start rebuilding my life, free from your lies and deceit. As I walk out of the mediator's office, I feel a weight lift from my shoulders. The battle may be far from over, but for the first time in a long time, I feel a sense of hope. I know that no matter what challenges lie ahead, I have the strength to face them head-on, armed with the truth and the knowledge that I fought for what was right. The courtroom is packed, the air thick with tension as I take my seat at the plaintiff's table. Trent sits across the aisle, his face a mask of barely contained rage. His lawyer, a shark in an expensive suit, leans over to whisper something in his ear. My own attorney, a fierce woman named Valerie, squeezes my hand reassuringly. Don't worry, Aaliyah. We have an airtight case. Trent's lies are about to catch up with him. The judge, a stern-looking man in his 60s, enters the courtroom, and we all rise. He takes his seat, shuffling through the papers on his bench. In the matter of Thompson v. Thompson, we are here today to determine the division of assets and to address the allegations of financial misconduct. Counsel, please proceed with your opening statements. Valerie rises, her voice clear and confident. Your Honor, we will prove that the defendant, Trent Thompson, engaged in a pattern of deceit and financial fraud, hiding assets and taking out loans without the knowledge or consent of his wife, Aaliyah Thompson. We have irrefutable evidence, including bank statements, email records, and testimony from a private investigator that will show the depth of Mr. Thompson's betrayal. Trent's lawyer stands, his voice smooth and oily. Your Honor, my client is a victim of a vindictive wife who will stop at nothing to ruin his reputation. The evidence presented is circumstantial at best and does not prove any wrongdoing on Mr. Thompson's part. The judge nods, his expression unreadable. Very well. Let's hear from the witnesses. Over the next several hours, a parade of witnesses take the stand. The private investigator details the complex web of financial transactions Trent used to hide his assets. The bank manager confirms the second mortgage taken out on our home without my knowledge. Even Trent's former business partner testifies to the secret deals and shady investments. Through it all, Trent sits stone-faced, his jaw clenched tight, but as the evidence mounts, I can see the cracks beginning to form in his facade. Finally, it's Trent's turn to take the stand. He swaggers up to the witness box, his arrogance on full display. But as Valerie begins her cross-examination, His confident veneer begins to crumble. Mr. Thompson, can you explain why you took out a second mortgage on your family home without your wife's knowledge or consent? Valerie asks, her voice sharp. Trent shifts in his seat, his eyes darting around the room. I was just trying to secure our financial future. Aaliyah doesn't understand the sacrifices I've made for this family. Valerie scoffs, holding up a stack of documents. Sacrifices? You mean the money you funneled into your secret business account? The investments you made without your wife's input? Trent's face reddens, his fists clenching. Those investments were sound. I was going to make us rich. Valerie shakes her head, her voice dripping with disdain. Rich, while putting your family's home and financial security at risk? No, Mr. Thompson. The only person you were looking out for was yourself. As Valerie continues her relentless questioning, Trent's composure crumbles. He lashes out, his voice rising to a shout. You have no idea what you're talking about. I'm the victim here, not her. The judge bangs his gavel, his voice booming through the courtroom. Order. Mr. Thompson, control yourself, or I will have you removed. In the end, the evidence is overwhelming. The judge rules in my favor, granting me the house and a significant portion of Trent's ill-gotten gains. Trent storms out of the courtroom, his face a mask of fury. As I stand on the courthouse steps, Valerie by my side, I feel a sense of relief wash over me. It's been a long, painful battle, but I've emerged victorious. Trent's lies and betrayal have been exposed, and I can finally start to rebuild my life on my own terms. I know there will be challenges ahead, but for the first time in a long time, I feel a sense of hope. I've reclaimed what's rightfully mine, and I won't let anyone take that away from me again. The future is bright, and I'm ready to face it head on. The sun streams through the windows of my new home, casting a warm glow on the hardwood floors. It's been 6 months since the divorce was finalized, and I've finally finished unpacking the last of the boxes. The house feels like a sanctuary, a place where I can start fresh and build the life I've always wanted. I'm just putting the finishing touches on my new home office when the doorbell rings. I open the door to find Sarah, a wide grin on her face and a bottle of champagne in her hand. Congratulations, Aaliyah. I can't believe you did it. Your own business, your own home. You're an inspiration. Sarah pulls me into a tight hug, her eyes misty with emotion. I laugh, feeling a sense of pride swell in my chest. I couldn't have done it without you, Sarah. Your support means everything to me. We settle onto the couch, sipping champagne and chatting about my plans for the future. I tell her about the small business loan I secured, using my portion of the settlement to fund my dream of opening a community bookstore. I never thought I'd be able to do something like this, Sarah, to take control of my life and create something that's truly mine. I shake my head, still in disbelief. Sarah nods, her expression serious. You've come so far, Aaliyah. I'm so proud of you. As we talk, my phone buzzes with an incoming text. I glance down, my stomach dropping as I see Trent's name on the screen. Can we talk? I need to see you. The message reads, his tone pleading. I show the text to Sarah, my hands shaking slightly. What do I do? I thought I was done with him. Sarah takes my hand, her voice firm. You don't owe him anything, Aaliyah. He lost the right to be a part of your life the moment he betrayed you. I nod, taking a deep breath. You're right. I'm not going to let him ruin this moment. I delete the message, feeling a sense of liberation wash over me. Trent may have been a part of my past, but he has no place in my future. A few weeks later, I'm standing in front of my new bookstore, a sense of pride swelling in my chest as I cut the ribbon at the grand opening. The community has rallied around me, filling the store with well wishes and eager customers. As I mingle with the crowd, I catch a glimpse of a familiar face in the back of the store. Trent stands there, his expression a mix of anger and desperation. I excuse myself from the conversation and make my way over to him, my heart pounding in my chest. What are you doing here, Trent? I thought I made it clear that I don't want to see you. My voice is steady, but I can feel my hands trembling slightly. Trent steps forward, his eyes pleading. Aaliyah, please, I made a mistake. I never meant to hurt you. I scoff, shaking my head. A mistake? Is that what you call lying to me for years? Stealing from our family? No, Trent. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. He reaches for me, but I step back, my voice rising. I've built a new life for myself, Trent, a life that doesn't include you, and I won't let you ruin that. Trent's face twists with anger, his fists clenching at his sides. You think you're better than me now? You think you can just cut me out of your life? I meet his gaze, unflinching. I know I'm better than the lies and the betrayal, and I know that I deserve more than what you gave me. I turn to walk away, but Trent grabs my arm, his grip tight. You'll regret this, Aaliyah. You need me. I wrench my arm free, my voice cold. No, Trent, I don't need you. I never did. With that, I walk back into the bookstore, my head held high. I'm surrounded by the people who love and support me, the people who have been there for me through thick and thin. As I look around at the smiling faces and the shelves filled with books, I feel a sense of contentment wash over me. I've overcome so much to get to this point, and I know that no matter what challenges lie ahead, I have the strength to face them head-on. I am Aaliyah Thompson, a survivor, a fighter, and a woman who has reclaimed her life. And nothing, not even the ghosts of my past, can take that away from me.
Perfume lingers. It always does. Even when you think you've washed it away, traces cling to fabric like guilty fingerprints. The scent on Mark's collar wasn't mine, a sickly sweet jasmine that made my stomach turn. I held the shirt closer, inhaling deeply, making absolutely certain. No mistake. This wasn't my signature vanilla and amber. I'm Jane, and until this moment, I thought I knew exactly who I was: successful businesswoman, devoted wife. Daughter of David Mitchell, who built Mitchell Trading from nothing. Funny how one small detail can shatter everything you believe about your life. Honey, have you seen my blue tie? Mark called from upstairs. The one with the diagonal stripes. My fingers tightened around the shirt. Check the back of the closet door, I answered, keeping my voice steady. You wore it last week to the Henderson meeting. Got it. His footsteps echoed above, followed by the sound of drawers opening and closing. I carefully placed the shirt back in the laundry basket, arranging it exactly as I'd found it. My hands were trembling. The rational part of my brain tried to construct innocent explanations, a colleague's perfume from a casual hug, perhaps. But my gut knew better. After 12 years of marriage, you develop a sixth sense about these things. Mark appeared in the doorway, adjusting his tie. How do I look? I turned to face him, studying the man I'd pledged my life to. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his smile confident and warm. He looked exactly like the man I married, and somehow like a complete stranger. Very handsome, I said, forcing a smile. Important meeting today. Just the usual client lunch. Probably won't be back until late. He grabbed his briefcase from the counter. Don't wait up if you're tired. As he leaned in to kiss my cheek, I caught another whiff of that jasmine scent, so faint it was almost imperceptible. My stomach clenched. Have a good day, I managed. The moment the front door closed, I pulled out my phone and called the office. Sandra, it's Jane. I'm not feeling well, might take a personal day. Of course, Mrs. Mitchell. Should I reschedule your afternoon appointments? Please. And Sandra? If my father asks, tell him I'll catch up on everything tomorrow. I ended the call and sank into a kitchen chair, my mind racing. The perfume was just the latest piece of a puzzle I'd been subconsciously assembling for weeks. The late meetings. The guarded phone calls. The way he'd grown distant, distracted. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel, lunch today. Need to talk about something. Rachel, my best friend since high school. The one person I could always count on. I started to type a response, then stopped. Something about her message felt off. Rachel never needed to talk, she just talked. I opened our text history, scrolling through recent conversations. The patterns jumped out at me now: her sudden cancellations, vague explanations, decreased enthusiasm in our usual banter. How had I missed it? My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I considered my response. Every instinct screamed that I was standing on the edge of something devastating. But if I wanted answers, I needed to play this carefully. Sorry, not feeling great today. Rain check. I typed, then added a sick emoji for good measure. Her response came quickly, no problem. Feel better. Red heart. Too quickly. Too cheerful. The heart emoji felt like a slap. I set my phone down and walked to the window, watching Mark's car disappear around the corner. The morning sun cast long shadows across our perfectly manicured lawn, highlighting the life we'd built together. Or rather, the life I thought we'd built. One thing was certain, I needed proof. And once I had it, someone would pay. 3 days after finding that perfume, I sat at my father's mahogany dining table, watching my husband laugh at something Rachel had just whispered. The sound grated against my nerves like steel on glass. More wine, Jane. My father held up a bottle of his prized Bordeaux. Please. I pushed my glass forward, noting how Rachel's eyes followed the movement. She'd been watching me all evening, her usual warmth replaced by something calculating. Lori bounced little Eli on her knee at the other end of the table. Mark, you haven't told Jane about the promotion yet, have you? My hand froze mid-reach for my wine glass. What promotion? Mark's laugh died abruptly. He shot his sister a look that could have frozen hell. I was waiting for the right moment. It's not final yet. Oh. Rachel's voice carried a note of false surprise. I thought you said it was a done deal last week when she stopped herself, taking a large sip of wine. The room grew painfully quiet. I could hear the tick of my father's antique clock, marking each second of this exquisite torture. When you what, Rachel? I kept my tone light, casual. The perfect concerned friend. When we ran into each other at Starbucks, she finished smoothly. Just a quick hello between meetings. My father cleared his throat. Speaking of business, Mark, those quarterly reports need reviewing before Monday. Perhaps you could come in early. Actually, Mark shifted in his chair, I have a breakfast meeting with clients. Cancel it, my father said flatly. The steel in his voice made everyone look up. David Mitchell didn't suggest things, he commanded them. I watched Mark's jaw tighten. Of course, sir. Lori stood suddenly, Eli squirming in her arms. Someone needs a diaper change. Jane, would you mind showing me where? Use the guest bathroom upstairs, I said, not taking my eyes off Mark and Rachel. Second door on the right. The moment Lori left, Rachel pushed back her chair. I should probably head out. Early morning tomorrow. But you haven't had dessert, I protested. I made your favorite, chocolate soufflé. Rachel hesitated, her hand clutching her purse. Another time. Stay. Mark's voice was too eager, too insistent. He caught himself and added, we hardly see you anymore. I watched the silent communication pass between them, the slight shake of Rachel's head, the tightening around Mark's eyes. How long had I been blind to this dance? Rachel. My father's voice cut through the tension. Before you go, I wanted to ask about that charity gala you're organizing. The one next month. Oh, yes. Rachel sank back into her chair, trapped by courtesy. We're still finalizing the details. Excellent. Jane will be handling the firm's donation this year. Perhaps you two should coordinate. I smiled at Rachel, all teeth. We should definitely meet up to discuss it. Just the two of us. The color drained from her face. That would be nice. Mark's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then quickly turned it face down. But not before I caught the flash of an incoming message notification. Important client? I asked innocently. Just spam, he muttered. The rest of dinner passed in a blur of forced small talk and careful avoidance. When Rachel finally left, Mark insisted on walking her to her car. I watched from the window as they stood too close, speaking in urgent whispers. "You see it too, don't you?" My father's voice startled me. I turned to find him studying me with those shrewd eyes that had built an empire. "See what?" He took a slow sip of his Bordeaux. "I didn't build this family's success by being blind to betrayal, Jane. The question is, what are you going to do about it? What would you do?" His smile was cold. "I'd remember that revenge, like fine wine, is best served at precisely the right temperature. Too hot, and you lose the subtleties. Too cold, and you miss the full impact." I heard Mark's footsteps approaching. My father squeezed my shoulder and whispered, "Choose your moment carefully, daughter. But when you strike, make it count." That night, I lay awake listening to Mark's steady breathing beside me, planning my next move. Tomorrow, I decided, I would start following him. Sometimes the only way to expose a snake is to track it to its nest. The Monarch Bar was exactly the kind of place Rachel would choose, all crystal chandeliers and velvet booths, trying too hard to be sophisticated. From my position at the corner table, partially hidden behind a massive floral arrangement, I had a perfect view of the entrance. Mark had told me he was working late. Again. But his car wasn't in the office parking lot when I drove past at 7. Now, watching him walk through those ornate doors at 8:15, I felt my wedding ring grow heavy on my finger. He didn't even look around before sliding into a booth near the back. Waiting. I ordered another club soda and watched the minutes tick by on my phone. At 8:30 exactly, Rachel walked in. She'd changed since the office, traded her usual conservative blazer for a black dress that showed more skin than it covered. The jasmine perfume probably came with it. My fingers tightened around my glass as she slipped into Mark's booth. They didn't kiss. That would have been too obvious. Instead, they leaned close, heads bent together like conspirators. His hand disappeared under the table. Rachel laughed, that throaty laugh she reserved for men she wanted to impress. The waiter appeared at my table. "Another club soda, ma'am." "No." I stood, dropping cash on the table. "But I'd like you to deliver something to that couple in the corner booth." 5 minutes later, I watched the waiter place a champagne bottle at their table. Mark's face lit up until he read the note I'd attached. "Congratulations on the promotion. Love, Jane." The color drained from both their faces. Rachel knocked over her wine glass, reaching for her purse. Mark's head whipped around, scanning the bar. But I was already walking toward them, calm as still water. "Don't get up," I said, sliding into their booth. "You both look so comfortable." "Jane," Rachel started. "Shut up." My voice was ice. "I've known you since we were 15, Rachel. 15 years of secrets and sleepovers and supporting each other through every crisis. And this is how you repay that loyalty." Mark tried to take my hand. "This isn't what you think." I yanked away. "Really? Because I think my husband and my best friend have been fucking behind my back. Am I wrong?" The silence was answer enough. "How long?" Rachel stared at her spilled wine, watching it seep into the white tablecloth. 6 months. The number hit me like a physical blow. 6 months. Half a year of lies. Of family dinners and girls' nights and casual texts. Of Rachel asking about my marriage, pretending to care while she destroyed it. "I never meant," Rachel's voice cracked. "To what? Get caught?" I leaned forward. "Or did you never mean to want everything I have? My husband, my family's connections, my life?" "That's not fair," she whispered. "Fair?" I laughed, the sound sharp enough to make nearby diners turn. Was it fair when you helped me pick out anniversary gifts for Mark? When you held my hand at my mother's funeral? When you stood beside me at my wedding as my maid of honor? Mark touched my shoulder. Jane, please. People are staring. Let them. I shrugged off his hand. Let them see exactly who you both are. Rachel was crying now, mascara tracking down her cheeks. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Keep your sorry. I stood, smoothing my dress. But know this, I'm not done. Not even close. You both seem to have forgotten who I am, who my family is. That was your first mistake. What are you going to do? Mark's voice held an edge of panic. I smiled, the same smile my father used before destroying his competitors. Nothing yet. But I want you both to remember this feeling, this moment of knowing I could ruin you, and not knowing when it's coming. Consider it foreplay. I turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Rachel. That perfume you're wearing. It's cheap. Like everything else about you. Walking out of the Monarch bar, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. Let them sweat, let them wonder what I'd do next. My father was right, revenge, like fine wine, needs time to breathe. My phone buzzed, a text from Rachel, please, can we talk? I deleted it without responding. The time for talking was over. Now it was time to plan. The burner phone slipped from my trembling fingers, clattering onto Mark's pristine car floor mats. I'd found it tucked behind the spare tire while pretending to look for a missing earring, an old trick my father taught me about searching competitors' offices. Always have a plausible excuse. 217 messages. Dozens of photos. 6 months of digital betrayal, wrapped in a cheap black plastic case. Mrs. Mitchell. Garcia, our security guard, tapped on the garage window. Everything all right? The cameras showed you'd been down here a while. I pocketed the phone. Just being thorough about that earring. It was my grandmother's. His expression softened. Want me to help look? No need. I locked Mark's car. Some things are meant to stay lost. Upstairs in my office, I closed the blinds and scrolled through the messages. Each one felt like swallowing broken glass. Rachel, missing you already. Last night was incredible. Mark, can't stop thinking about that thing you do with your tongue. Rachel, Jane suspects nothing. She actually asked me to help plan your anniversary party. Mark, you're so much more exciting than her. She's become boring. Predictable. My finger hovered over the call button to my father's private investigator. One call, and I could have a full dossier on their every movement. But that would mean admitting this betrayal to my father, watching pity replace pride in his eyes. My office phone buzzed. Mrs. Mitchell. Your sister-in-law is here. Lori stood in my doorway, Eli balanced on her hip. Her eyes were red-rimmed. I need to tell you something. I gestured to the chair across from my desk, keeping the burner phone hidden in my lap. What's wrong? I saw them. She bounced Eli nervously. Mark and Rachel. At the lake house last weekend. The lake house. My sanctuary. The place where Mark and I had spent our honeymoon. When Mark said he was helping me with Eli's custody paperwork. Lori's voice cracked. I'm so sorry, Jane. I should have told you sooner. How long have you known? 3 months. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Mark said he'd help with my legal fees if I kept quiet. I needed the money, but I can't. I can't sleep anymore. I stood, walking to the window. Below, downtown traffic crawled through the afternoon heat. Does anyone else know? Just Rachel's brother. He caught them at some hotel last month. Of course. The web of lies and silence spreads like cancer, corrupting everything it touches. What are you going to do? Lori asked. I turned back to her, decision crystallizing. Nothing. Yet. But. Take Eli home, Lori. Forget we had this conversation. After she left, I pulled up the company's financial records. Mark's recent promotion had given him access to significant accounts. If I knew my husband, and I did, better than he thought, he'd have gotten sloppy with the money too. 3 hours later, I had what I needed. Expensive hotel charges masked as business meetings. Cash withdrawals from company accounts. Rachel's charity foundation suddenly receiving generous anonymous donations. My father's voice came from the doorway. Found what you were looking for. I didn't bother hiding the screens. How long have you known? About the affair or the embezzlement? Both. He settled into Lori's vacated chair. Long enough to know you'd figure it out yourself. The question is, what's your next move? I held up the burner phone. I have evidence of the affair. And now proof he's stealing from the company. Be careful, Jane. Revenge is like a double-edged sword. I learned from the best. I met his gaze. Remember Carlton Industries? A smile tugged at his lips. Carlton Industries, our biggest competitor until my father discovered their CEO's gambling addiction. He didn't just destroy the company, he made sure everyone knew exactly why it fell. The board meets next week, I said. Mark's presenting the quarterly reports. My father nodded slowly. Perfect timing for some discrepancies to come to light. I slipped the burner phone back into my pocket. I think it's time Rachel and Mark learned what happens when you betray a Mitchell. The sword was drawn. Now I just had to decide where to strike first. My mother's antique serving dishes gleamed under the dining room lights as I arranged them perfectly on the table. The annual Mitchell family dinner, traditionally a celebration of the firm's success, would serve a different purpose this year. The flowers look lovely, Mark said from the doorway, adjusting his tie. You've outdone yourself. I centered a crystal vase filled with white lilies, Rachel's favorite. I wanted everything to be memorable. The doorbell rang. Mark moved to answer it, but I stopped him. Let me. You should check the wine cellar, make sure the Bordeaux is breathing properly. Rachel stood on the doorstep, wearing a cream-colored dress that probably cost 3 months' salary. Her smile faltered when she saw me. Jane, I've been trying to reach you. Come in. I stepped aside. Everyone's looking forward to your presentation about the charity foundation. She paled slightly. Presentation? Didn't Mark tell you? The board wants to hear about where their donations are going. The next hour was a symphony of arrivals, board members, their spouses, my father with his trademark scrutinizing gaze. Lori came without Eli, her eyes darting nervously between Mark and me. During cocktails, I watched Rachel touch Mark's arm 3 times. He checked his phone 12 times. Both jumped when my father clinked his glass for attention. Before dinner, he announced, I'd like to address some business matters. Mark, you have the quarterly reports. Mark straightened his jacket. Of course, sir. Though perhaps we could wait until. Actually, I interrupted, I have something to share first. I retrieved a folder from my study. Some interesting discrepancies came to light during my review. Rachel's wine glass trembled slightly. Mark's confident smile cracked at the edges. It seems, I continued, that several large donations to a certain charity foundation came directly from company accounts. Unauthorized transfers, cleverly disguised as business expenses. The room grew silent. My father's expression hardened as I laid out photocopied bank statements and hotel receipts. Jane, Mark started, there's a perfectly reasonable. I'm not finished. I pulled out the burner phone. I also found this. The messages are enlightening. Especially the ones about the lake house. Rachel stood abruptly. I should go. Sit down. My father's voice could have frozen hell. Both of you will hear this out. I played selected messages through the room's speakers. Mark and Rachel's intimate exchanges echoed off the walls, each word a nail in their coffins. Board members shifted uncomfortably. Someone's wife gasped. 6 months, I said, my voice steady. 6 months of betrayal, theft, and lies. From my husband and my best friend. Please, Rachel whispered, mascara tracking down her cheeks. We never meant to get caught. To destroy everything my family built. I turned to the board members. The foundation is a shell. They've been embezzling your donations, using company money to fund their affair. Mark lunged for the folder. You can't prove. My father's hand clamped on his shoulder. Actually, she can. The SEC will be very interested in these records. You're bluffing, Mark snarled. You wouldn't risk the scandal. I smiled, my father's smile, the one that preceded destruction. Try me. The Mitchell name will survive. Will yours? Rachel broke first, crumpling into her chair. I'll resign. Pay everything back. Just please. Too late. I placed a final document on the table. The police have already been notified about the financial fraud. And Mark? I've filed for divorce. Your things are packed in the garage. The room erupted in chaos. Board members demanded explanations. Mark shouted about betrayal, rich, coming from him. Rachel fled, heels clicking on marble. Through it all, I remained standing, watching my carefully orchestrated destruction unfold. My father caught my eye across the room, nodding slightly. Proud. Later, after everyone left, I sat alone at the empty table. The lilies were wilting, their sweet scent turning sour. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. I never wanted your life. I just wanted to matter like you do. I deleted it without responding. Some things, once broken, can never be repaired. And some betrayals deserve no mercy. Tomorrow, the real damage would begin. Tonight, I would sleep soundly, knowing I'd chosen my moment perfectly. The morning after the dinner party, I walked into my office to find Mark waiting. His eyes were bloodshot, his expensive suit wrinkled. The Wall Street Journal lay open on my desk, our company's scandal already making headlines. You've destroyed everything, he said quietly. Was revenge worth it? I moved to my chair, noting how he flinched when I passed. Funny. I was about to ask you the same thing. The SEC is freezing my accounts. Rachel's foundation is being investigated. Her brother lost his job because of the connection. He leaned forward. You didn't just burn us, you torched everyone around us. Collateral damage. The words tasted bitter. Like what you did to Lori and Eli. His laugh was hollow. At least I helped them. What have you done except prove you're exactly like your father? Cold. Calculating. Willing to sacrifice anyone for the sake of winning. The truth in his words stung more than I expected. My phone buzzed, another message from Rachel's mother, begging me to drop the charges. I'd gotten 12 similar ones since dawn. You want to talk about sacrifice? I pulled up the security footage from the lake house. Let's discuss what you did in my mother's bed. The one she died in. Color drained from his face. How did you? I had cameras installed everywhere after she passed. To preserve memories, I told myself. I played the clip, muting the sound. Imagine my surprise when I found these. He lunged across the desk, knocking over my coffee. "You vindictive bitch." Security burst in, restraining him. My father appeared in the doorway, his expression thunderous. "Get him out. And make sure he doesn't leave town, the police have more questions." After they dragged Mark away, my father studied me. "You look terrible." "Thanks. The board's calling an emergency meeting. There's concern about how this affects the firm's reputation." I straightened papers Mark had scattered. "We'll weather it. Jane." His tone made me look up. "Some board members think we should distance ourselves from the scandal. They're suggesting you take a leave of absence." The betrayal hit like a physical blow. "You agreed." I abstained from the vote. "But they're right, we need to protect the firm." "The firm I just protected by exposing fraud. The firm you exposed to public scrutiny." He sighed. "Sometimes winning the battle costs you the war." My phone buzzed again. "Lori, they're taking Eli. Mark's charges mean I lose custody to his father. Please help." The walls seemed to close in. Everything I'd done to protect my family, my legacy, was unraveling. I'd wanted justice, but at what cost? Rachel's brother, unemployed. Eli, losing his mother. The firm I'd given everything to, now turning its back. Even my father's carefully neutral expression felt like abandonment. "Take the leave," he said softly. "Let things cool down. We'll weather this, like we always do." "We?" I stood, suddenly unable to breathe. There is no we. There never was. It was always about the firm, wasn't it? About appearances. "Jane. Get out." When he didn't move, I hurled my coffee mug at the wall. "Get out." Alone in my office, I watched headlines scroll across my screen. The scandal was spreading, consuming everything in its path. My phone kept buzzing, pleas, threats, accusations. Each message a reminder of lives I'd helped destroy. Rachel's last text flashed, "I hope it was worth it. We all lost everything, but you lost yourself." I looked at my reflection in the darkened window, perfectly styled hair, designer suit, Mitchell family steel in my spine. The image blurred as tears finally came. I'd won. I'd destroyed them all. But standing in my empty office, watching my carefully constructed world crumble, I realized Rachel was right. In becoming my father's daughter, in choosing revenge over mercy, I'd lost something essential. Something that no amount of justice could restore. The sun set over the city skyline, casting long shadows across my empire of ashes. Tomorrow, I'd have to face the consequences. Tonight, I let myself mourn everything I'd sacrificed at the altar of revenge. The lake house looked smaller in the rain. Rachel sat on the covered porch, her designer clothes replaced by jeans and an old sweater. She didn't look surprised to see me. "I wondered when you'd come," she said. I held up the envelope that had arrived that morning. "Your letter was unexpected. Did you read it?" "Every word." I settled into the chair opposite her, watching raindrops hit the lake. 15 pages of explanation. Or justification, depending on how you look at it. She wrapped her arms around herself. "Mark's being sentenced tomorrow. 5 years, probably less with good behavior. The SEC was thorough. And me? The foundation's assets are frozen. But since you're cooperating." I let the sentence hang. Lightning flashed across the water. Rachel flinched. "I used to envy how you never showed fear. Even in high school, you were always so certain." Appearances. I pulled out my phone, showing her the security footage. The lake house cameras caught everything. Including the night you both came here after my mother's funeral. Her face crumpled. Jane. I watched it all. Every visit. Every time you played house in my family's sanctuary. My voice remained steady. You wore my mother's robe. The blue silk one she loved. I didn't know. You knew exactly what you were doing. Both of you. I stood, walking to the railing. What I can't figure out is why. Was it just about hurting me? Or did you really think you could replace me? I wanted to be you. The words exploded from her. Perfect Jane Mitchell, with her perfect life and perfect family. Do you know what it's like living in your shadow? Being the friend who's never quite good enough. So you fucked my husband. Stole from my family. That was your solution. Mark understood. He felt it too, never measuring up to the Mitchell standard. She laughed bitterly. We were both tired of being supporting characters in the Jane Mitchell show. Supporting characters. I turned slowly. You were my best friend. My sister in everything but blood. I trusted you with everything. Everything except the truth. About who you really are, what your family really does. She stood, anger finally breaking through her guilt. Your father destroyed my brother's career years ago. Did you know that? Of course not. The Mitchells don't discuss their casualties. The revelation hit like ice water. What? Ask your father about Carlton Industries. About why my brother really left finance. Her hands shook. Mark and I. We thought we could beat you at your own game. Take something from the Mitchells for once. Understanding dawned, bitter and cold. So this wasn't just an affair. It was revenge. Does it matter anymore? We all lost. She pulled out a familiar key, my mother's spare. Here. I won't need it where I'm going. Where's that? Away. Far from here. From you. She stepped past me, pausing at the stairs. You won, Jane. Just like a Mitchell always does. I hope it fills whatever emptiness drives you. I caught her arm. Rachel. What? I loved you. Despite everything, you were family. That's the problem with Mitchells. She gently pulled away. Your love comes with too high a price. I watched her walk to her car, disappearing into the rain. The key felt heavy in my hand, my mother's key, witness to so many betrayals. Inside, the lake house still held echoes of the past. Photos on the walls, memories of happier times. I traced my mother's face behind the glass. My phone buzzed, my father. I let it ring. Some victories feel like defeats. Some revenge leaves wounds that never heal. Standing in my mother's house, surrounded by ghosts of trust and friendship, I finally understood the true cost of being a Mitchell. Tomorrow, Mark would face justice. Rachel would disappear. The firm would survive, as it always did. But something had shifted, something fundamental and irreversible. I placed my mother's key on the mantel, next to her photo. Then I walked out, leaving the past locked behind me. It was time to write my own story, one where victory didn't require destroying everything I loved. The rain had stopped. Ahead, the road stretched into darkness, full of possibilities and second chances. I drove toward it, finally ready to find out who Jane Mitchell could be without the weight of revenge. The divorce papers lay unsigned on my desk, Mark's empty signature line a final act of defiance. Through my office window, I watched movers empty his corner office, another Mitchell legacy stripped bare. My father's reflection appeared in the glass. The board voted. You're officially CEO. And you're officially retired. I didn't turn around. Was that always the plan? Let me destroy my marriage, my friendships, just to prove I could be ruthless enough for the position. You proved you're a Mitchell. He moved beside me. Though perhaps a different kind than I expected. On my desk, a newspaper showed Rachel's foundation being dissolved, its remaining assets distributed to legitimate charities. Another showed Mark entering prison. Victory, by any measure. I found the Carlton Industries files, I said. Rachel's brother wasn't the only casualty of our family's success, was he? My father's silence was answer enough. I'm restructuring the firm. I finally faced him. Starting with full audits of all our past acquisitions. Restitution where necessary. That could cost millions. Then it costs millions. He studied me with new eyes. You're not just changing the firm. You're changing what it means to be a Mitchell. Someone has to. My phone buzzed, Lori. She'd accepted my offer to head our new charitable foundation, using her legal background to help families like her own. Eli would stay with her, thanks to some carefully applied Mitchell influence in the right courts. The board won't like these changes, my father warned. The board works for me now. I handed him a file. Starting with this, we're helping Rachel's brother restart his investment firm. Privately, anonymously. Conscience doesn't build empires. No, but it might help me sleep at night. I picked up my pen, signing the divorce papers with swift strokes. Besides, isn't that what you taught me? The long game matters more than quick victories. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Your mother would be proud. She always said you'd find your own way. She also said revenge was a poison. I touched the photo on my desk, Mom at the lake house, laughing. I just didn't understand what she meant until now. My father moved to leave, then paused. The lake house. What will you do with it? Sell it. Use the money to start a scholarship fund in Mom's name. I met his eyes. Some places should stay in the past. After he left, I opened my drawer, pulling out Rachel's letter. Her last words still haunted me. We were both prisoners of the Mitchell name, just in different ways. I hope you find freedom from it, Jane. I finally have. The city stretched before me, its skyline dotted with buildings bearing our name. But for the first time, I saw beyond the empire, beyond the legacy of power and revenge that had shaped us all. My assistant knocked. Your next appointment is here. The Carlton Industries Survivors Fund. Send them in. I slipped Rachel's letter into my shredder, watching the past dissolve into confetti. The Mitchell name would continue. The firm would prosper. But perhaps success didn't have to mean destruction. Perhaps power could build instead of break. I touched my mother's photo one last time, then turned to face my visitors. Their stories needed hearing. Their wounds needed healing. And I needed to prove that a Mitchell could be more than just a name to fear. Outside, the sun broke through clouds, casting long shadows across the city. Somewhere, Rachel was starting over. Mark was facing his consequences. And I was finally writing my own definition of victory. The future stretched before me, uncertain but full of possibility. I'd learned the true price of revenge, and chosen a different path. Now it was time to see where it led. Welcome, I said to my visitors. Let's talk about making things right.